All right, we're live. I've got the Magento God King himself.
Podcast. It's the intro.
I think I'm gonna use that audio and make that my the podcast intro.
Podcast.
Oh, dude, that's so good. I love it. I'm gonna definitely use that. Willem,
where are you?
Willem, I am in my car. I'm in the car, man. This car is beginning to be kind of a thing. You know?
I guess previous. I listened to the previous episode with Brent, so everyone should. If you arrived here and you didn't come past Brent or Daniel, step back.
I was absolutely shocked that you watched that. You know, I was surprised, but I was pleasantly surprised.
For what reason?
Thank you for.
You're my two of my favorite podcasters. Brent is awesome.
I appreciate that. That's very kind of you. Brent is a newbie podcaster, though, to be fair, so I don't think he should get quite as much credit.
He's catching up fast, though. He got the numbers on you. He got a good ratio going at the moment.
He does. He's catching up fast. So I watched the panel, the live panel at Meet Magento Poland, and it was good, man. It was interesting to see your perspective. I liked a lot of stuff Slava said. I think that he had some great points. I don't know where we want to jump into this whole debacle, this whole situation.
It's up to you, man. Figure it out.
It is I
answer questions.
Figure it out, man. You answer questions. I ask the questions. Here's my question: what do you hate most about the Magento? No, I'm just kidding. I thought that one thing that stuck out to me. Actually, I saw Karen tweeted something that something to the effect of being there, and a lot of people. By the way, it's cool. It's just been cool to see the pictures of the familiar Magento faces. I know you guys are all you guys are all saying similar things of man, it's so cool to be in person with people. And so it just makes me happy to see your smiling faces all together and to know that, you're having a good time.
Yeah, it was great. Just arriving at a Magento event, just arriving at the venue, and seeing an orange Magento flag hanging at the facade, at the front, at the gate.
Yeah,
it's this is it.
It's
not red. It's
arriving.
Orange. It's orange.
Yeah. It's like arriving to the mother. It's like arriving to your motherland. It's like you left your country of origin when you were a child and then coming back as an adult.
Imagine walking into a room now and there's Nacho, there's Talesh, there's Karen, there's Eric, there's Ivan, there's Lukasz, there's Fina. I took Fina with me. I mean, that I talk to him all the time, which still feels insane because he's my partner now. But it's still strange to get used to being in that kind of company. But imagine walking into a room with all these people and after 1.5 years of pandemic, just smiling faces, hugs, and fun.
Yeah, I had a similar thing. I went to this Bitcoin conference in Dallas, and which it's kind of funny, but they're super into orange too, because orange is the color, But we're not going to get into that, I promise. But that was my first time going to a business work conference in a long time, and there was a similar sense, although I was much newer to that whole community, but there's a similar sense of camaraderie and similar dynamics. And so for me, I was kind of having a similar like relived experience at that time too. So yeah, it's great. People are great. It's important to see people, to see faces, to hug people. Like, you know, it's.
Yeah, and it's like nothing changes. Like immediately, nothing changed. Like immediately, you're with family, and you have such great conversations. And of course, we had a really hot topic on hand. There was so much to explain, and of course, we met before we did the panel, so a lot became more clear during the panel. But yeah, we had really good talks beforehand, which was super valuable. Also to be able to speak to Danny and Slava beforehand, before we did the panel. Like we spent, I think in total, I arrived Sunday night and I left yesterday in the afternoon. So I spent a good 48 hours there, and at least 10 hours was spent talking with Danny and Slava. And that was super productive.
That's a lot. Wow, 10 hours.
Yeah, we had so many meetings and really constructive talks. And yeah, I think that's going places. It's not entirely up to me to lay that out, because Danny and Slava also they can only talk on their own behalf, and then take that to the board. That's how an association works. So they can't immediately talk on behalf of the board, but some really nice things came out of that. At least a common understanding between us and them, and I think we might go and see a lot of changes in the MA soon, Let's just say this: there was a sense of purpose was missing for the MA, and together we found that purpose, and that really changes things. So
that's huge.
Having that purpose and having the need of an association for the sake of the community. That's something that we need to rely on now, and having an entity that can carry that would be a major help.
I don't know exactly what it was about the association, because, and I always feel bad saying anything critical because I respect everybody on the association a ton, right? And I've sort of forgotten everybody that's on there, but Joshua Warren, I want to say,
he's kind of the
Danny
lead.
Slava, right? And I love him with all my heart, and he's right here in Dallas, local Texas man, and these are all people that get shit done. You know, these are all people that, excuse my French, but these are all people that have a bias towards action, right? Every single one of them.
Yeah.
And so I'm going, what is, like, everybody has a similar, and by the way, I see the emails go out, they ask for participation, they ask for feedback, they're working on stuff, right? And I'm always feeling guilty because I'm not participating, I'm not, doing the stuff I'm supposed to do. Other people have. Vinay mentioned in the panel that he had signed up to be a member and things like that, and so I don't know why, with all the right people, they've got all the right people in the room. They've got this organizational structure which makes a lot of sense. You want to have an association, and yet it's like you just said, there was a lack of purpose, and that
from what we could see, at least.
Yes,
and
totally.
I think from where all the discussions went, I think together we found quite a good purpose that always has been there on the background, like from the very beginning. You know, Ben and Brittany founded the association, and open source Magento was always a pillar there. But there was no immediate need for that, because it was taken care of, kind of.
So here's the thing I wanted to jump into. You just said open source was a pillar. And I don't... One of the things I've wondered forever, and I've seen people ask, is the Magento Association going to be in charge of open source in some capacity? And I believe that the phrase was used in the panel that a dialogue was started with Adobe around that. I mean, people have been asking this forever, right? And I don't know that anybody knows the answer to that question. I'm not saying that they haven't asked. My assumption, and I don't have any inside information, is that they asked Adobe and have been waiting for an answer in some form or fashion for probably years. And I'm not saying anybody at Adobe is bad or has bad I think they have all the best intentions. I think they put a lot of resources towards setting up the association, yada, 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 yada. But for some reason, it doesn't, what's the deal? Where's this thing?
Yeah,
you see what I'm trying to say.
I think there's other things we can also jump into, because
and let me just say, I apologize for interrupting, but I tweeted Slava yesterday. I did the post on LinkedIn yesterday. I haven't gotten a reply from Slava. I feel like maybe he's just busy. I don't know. Maybe Danny hasn't said it. Maybe they just, and listen, maybe they're not interested in my perspective. That's fine too. I just feel bad because I'm putting things out there a little bit critical, and it's like there's no response. There's no like.
Yeah.
And I loved a lot of stuff Slava said, and what I should do is just do a podcast with Slava. That'd be fantastic. But I don't know. It's weird. It's like there's like this where say something. Say something. Like tell me I'm wrong. Like just say something.
Yeah, and I mean, it's definitely not easy being on a board like that on a voluntary basis, having your day job. Not immediately getting stuff done that easily. There has been some real big challenges for them. And I think the one thing that is very prominent or obvious is that we need more visibility on what's going on. Like we've talked about transparency, but I mean, total transparency is also that's not even feasible. But an openness, general openness, and insight into what purpose and direction and what their goals are and all of that. And I kind of want to round up going too much into the association, because it's a bit of a different topic than what we started with our Mosca initiative, the open source.
Fantastic name, by the way. Are you playing off the Spanish word for fly? That's fantastic.
That was kind of a coincidence. Yeah. It was okay. Like we need to put something on top of that. That's not an official, because we're not an official entity at this stage. Like we're a group of people that felt like we needed to send out a message. And
let me, if you don't mind me interrupting, let me ask you this, because I know you're sick and tired of this line of questioning around the association. So let me ask you this. I saw some people say that, like Anton, I think Anton Krill tweeted that, listen, you don't need a fork, right? All you need to do is write some community modules and stuff like that. I am probably going to quickly get out of my depth technically as you begin to answer this question, but I'm going to do my best to grok your answer to this. Okay. So I know you've talked, obviously, if they go some wild microservices direction, that seems like a completely different code. I've heard people talk, I think one or two people have mentioned to me that they heard from somebody that Adobe was going to maybe rewrite everything in Java, like for the commercial product or whatever.
Who knows?
Who knows if that's true or not? Who has any idea? So obviously, if it went some crazy direction, that makes sense. But assuming that that's not the case, in terms of like specific issues today that you would need a fork for, versus just writing your own modules, like let's get into that a little bit.
Yeah. Today, there's no reason to fork. For the sake of today, there's no immediately. You could. There's arguments why it would be nice to have a fork today because of the lack of speed in merging pull requests and.
This is a big issue.
Yeah,
that's a huge.
It is a big issue, but it's that alone wouldn't.
What's
be...
the answer to that issue?
The answer to that issue might be at some point a fork. But right now, if that were just the issue, we probably could resolve that together with Adobe. If we could really raise the concerns there and make it about that, then we could say, come on, we need to find a joint effort or way to dive into that problem.
Just speed stuff up.
And we need to speed stuff up, and you should enable us to do that. But that's... For me, that's not where my emotion or my trigger or my investment in this comes from. For me, I am just sad of seeing the community shrink.
Yes.
There's an argument that for my product, Huva, I'm depending on a monolith. So for the continuation of my product, I depend on the monolith. But as with Magento 1, I don't see the monolith entirely go away soon because that's just impossible. So for Huva, I can depend on Adobe just dragging the monolith along and not spending too much energy on that. I can still build a product on top of that. But it won't be a great basis of trust for the merchants or the agencies that want to work with my product. Just not knowing what the future of the underlying product is, that sets uncertainty. I speak to a lot of merchants and agencies now from my own business perspective, and I hear a lot of concerns from these agencies. They're super happy for now. Some cases they tell me I rescued their business by giving them a viable front end.
Totally. Remind me real quick what scale you're at in terms of the number of merchants and agencies that are using Huva?
Closer to 50 agencies. 250.
250?
Yeah. 250.
And merchants?
That's harder to tell. I would need to... I don't feel like sharing the amount of licenses that is sold.
No, that's fine. That's fine.
Which would kind of map to the amount of merchants, I guess.
Well, yeah, that would be a simple way. No, and I don't mean to pry. I just think that's incredible. I mean, to me, that it just
we see great adoption, and it's
freaking awesome.
I think we'll be more transparent in terms of how many shops are live or are going live, and those numbers grow a bit. But I think at some point we'll see some numbers and systems like BuildWith or Webalizer, I don't know what it's called, and you can kind of see where we're at.
Sure.
Some stores that go live are freaking amazing, like they're like entirely energized by just seeing what people build with my product. And in some cases, there's restrictions of budget or a merchant that wants to have 100,000 pixel trackers on a shop, and you still have a 1-point page speed score. But you have a fantastic looking site, and you have developers that are happy, and there's still an increase of organic search traffic that comes in. So it's it's quite diverse.
I think developer happiness is a
so
huge
underestimated.
It's a leading indicator, or whatever it's something to pay a lot of attention to. And I think a lot of us have kind of drifted from, we've sort of accepted this thing that lit a fire under you and that you started solving for, right? A lot of us, 90 whatever percent, is just kind of like, yeah, it's kind of just fading away, and we're kind of moving on to other things, and that's fine. It's fine to move on to other things.
It's feedback that I get now from some agencies that say we're able to easily retain our programmers because they have fun doing their work, and it's been so incredibly hard selling a new developer that they have to work with Knockout and Require.js or any of those new PWA solutions. Well, at the other side, they can work on really sexy projects with new technologies and platforms that are just more marked, more widely accepted in the market. And it looks a lot better on their CV. No one wants to have Knockout on their CV or Require.js. That doesn't get you hired anywhere. So we drifted off a bit, but the reason why I am invested in this initiative, why today I don't think a fork is necessarily required, or why my business necessarily needs to have a fork, but the general sound that I get from my customers and that I see in the wider market is people having a hard time having trust in the platform because they don't plan on moving to Adobe's SaaS API solutions, distributed systems.
Right.
There's a real valid, like we wrote in the letter, there's a real valid use case for a monolith. And
the majestic monolith is what we're calling it going forward.
Yeah. And there are trends in the market, and I think Damien Retzinger, you spoke to on the first episode of Podcast.
Yes.
He's a really clever dude, and he explained why just the monolith is not the way into the future, but I think the monolith is one way into the future that is left unexplored currently. There's a lot of potential in that, and there's a real big market for that, and I think we can make that a real great alternative going into the future. And there's still a valid use case for all the other things. There's a major use case for what Adobe is building, but that does not serve my current customers and those hundreds of thousands of developers currently working with the PHP monolith that have a hard time adjusting to headless front ends. They don't want to work with JS only front ends, and I am not sure where Adobe is taking this platform. One thing I'm fairly certain of is that the monolith will not see much love from their side. I mean, they take care of it. They're good shepherds. They fix security issues.
They don't see it as a majestic monolith.
They wouldn't mention majestic and monolith in one sentence. No.
Right.
I sense very strongly that the monolith is necessary for them for legacy fallback support in the future. So they're moving towards different systems, and the monolith, keeping the monolith around, serves them to backward compatibility or like fallback mechanism to keep what you currently have. So people currently investing millions on the monolith, they can slowly migrate into the Adobe landscape and not throw away what they currently have.
Right.
And the side note is that performance is going to be not ideal when you keep using the monolith, and it will be probably much better if you move into those new microservices. If you're into the Adobe product landscape, if you want to buy into those cloud services and those SaaS solutions and everything that they're currently building, that's 100% valid. They paid a lot of money to have the right to take this product into that direction. That's entirely up to them. I have no right to tell them not to do that, but I have the right to take care of my own interests. And it's an open source product. If you go to magento.com/license, it tells you, in the spirit of open source and getting the best possible product available in the market, we think forking is a force. You may redistribute this product. Any developer can take this product, change it, and distribute it. It's written on the license page.
Okay. I was going to ask because I'm not familiar with the licensing details, but I assumed you'd looked. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I assumed you looked into it.
It's
so the only challenge.
And there's thousands of forks, because if you want to contribute to Magento, you go to github.com/magento/magento2 and you click fork. And if you go to GitHub now, there's thousands and thousands of forks.
Right, because a lot of people have not taken the time to get therapy.
I mean, they don't distribute it as a fork. They need the fork as a means to contribute to a product. I think many agencies have an internal fork where they patch things and they keep that in sync with Magento. And people are on the fence because of the term fork. It's okay.
It's causing a lot of grief.
I think that's great. I think that's great because we needed to shake things up. People needed to get 100%. Their eyes on this and and really understand what is happening here. And I'm willing to rename that to distribution, if that helps. Yeah. We're going to make a different distribution of Magento. I don't care about the technical term. What I care about is that the community gets some sense of ownership over the product.
Yeah.
And if someone tells me that's so difficult, you're going to have so much challenges, that makes me want to do it even quicker. Because I don't need that fork today. I don't need it because there's immediate need to own my own code base. There's immediate need for me to get the experience, the infrastructure, and the processes around maintaining a distribution of Magento. I don't want to depend on that immediately, but when the time comes that we would need a fork, then we have everything in order. And today, no merchant would switch to a fork. That's a valid argument. People said that, like, who's going to switch to your fork? That's never the idea. I don't need people to switch to that fork today. I need people in 2 years' time to look at our fork and say, well, they've done a nice job the last 2 years. They managed to keep that up and running. They made a lot of mistakes. They learned. They have the infrastructure now. And that looks dependable enough to me now that we're at the place where Adobe is killing off the product. I'm not saying they're doing that because there's no roadmap. I don't know. But I'm taking into account that maybe the moment comes that they pull the plug and we're empty-handed. And if we start to think then about what to do with the product, how we're going to distribute it, how do we... It's one repo that needs to be split into multiple packages and how do we do it, and how do we do security and all these things. And if we do it now, we don't need to care about security because Adobe's still doing that. We keep it in sync. We keep in sync with their product. We learn about running that infrastructure. We start to create a roadmap about what we think if we're going to push this forward as a lightweight Magento version. If we're going to make a distribution that's Magento Light, that's easier to learn for starting developers, it's cheaper for merchants to work with. It would be an entry-level version of Magento that they could use to grow into the ecosystem and maybe use the bigger Magento version and scale into Adobe Commerce. That doesn't need to happen today. If that happens in the next course of 2 years, and we get organized and we tackle some of the issues, we might be able to merge in some pull requests to make it PHP 9 compatible in 2 years. And we'd be faster than Adobe. That would be great.
Yeah.
And then we push that to Adobe and we say, hey, we created a pull request. We already have PHP 9 support. Seems to work fine. If you can do all your reviews and take a few months to take that up into your project, maybe you can merge it there. And we would be a help for them. We will be the play garden where not so much things depend on, like, it would be a less high-stake environment.
Right.
That's more accessible, and we have fun there. We can find back that energy that the community always used to have, that we can just go around and build a one-click payment Amazon copy within 1 day. That doesn't happen anymore. That was the grid. Adobe was so excited that they inherited this community, and now it's...
I keep thinking back. I mean, you mentioned the one-click thing, which I believe Joshua Warren worked on that. And we talked about it a million times on the podcast. And I keep thinking back to the sort of this earlier time where everybody was just building their own modules. You know, you couldn't even do everything in GitHub, which we were always ranting about. But there was this energy, and people were contributing via their own, community pool or local pool modules, whatever. And people were using those. And it was sort of maybe somewhat nostalgic, but there was a purity to it, and there was just more energy there. And and a lot of the things that Adobe and before Adobe Magento put in place, like the contribution programs, the incentive programs for contribution. I thought those were all really but I thought those were all really smart at the time. I thought they were brilliant. But they led to weird things where, I would talk to one person who was like heavily contributing and rising up the leaderboards, but and then whatever happened, and then
changing from a hackathon to a contribution day changed the whole spirit of it.
Changed everything.
You go there to fix bugs and earn points. And before we would go to a hackathon and we would build the craziest things.
Yeah, and you were earning points. But they were, they were decentralized points in the sense that it was you would get follows on Twitter because somebody would retweet it. Crypto points. Cool. You would get love from the community. You would get respect. You would get people would share your stuff, and we all like that. Like we all like it when our stuff is appreciated.
Now, if you spend 6 months working on a pull request and it doesn't get merged, that's so much rockstar stuff going on there. That's just one big...
And what I loved that Vinay said was that when there's this energy that is not... can't remember what word he uses. It's not channeled. It gets frustrated. And that crystallized for me the stuff I see with Jacob Winkler posting about stuff and Lukash and different people... and just other things I think about that really crystallize it for me. And I love the word urgency that you guys kept using. It's so important. And I can see how the association is making very reasonable arguments that, hey, let's get this in the schedule. It's going to take time. Let's end of year, get a plan going. And you could make an argument why those are completely reasonable approaches. But then you flip it from another perspective and you go, guys, this thing has been dying, right? Like there's a red blinking light. Our community is dying, right? And there's energy. Let's freaking channel it and let's get this thing going. And so I loved the way that you guys were communicating that.
Now, there was... Some people felt like we were trying to fragment the ecosystem, and I think if there's one thing, if we succeed, we can keep this shit together. We can stop people.
Watch the language.
Well, that's one strike for me, one strike for you. Roll back to minute 3. What did you
Roll it back.
I took notice. So I was very carefully on your other podcast not to swear.
That's more of a Phil thing. So it's the wild west on the podcast.
Yeah, no, but jokes aside, some people got emotionally triggered because we would be splitting up the ecosystem, and I think if there's one thing we can keep them in, because we give them a place within the community where they can still, what you said, channel that energy, and they would be still in the same ecosystem. We would be at the same event, and it would be the same, mostly the same code base. We would be struggling with the same issues. We could learn from each other. An agency could be working with both versions. They could apply the light version for a certain merchant and the regular version for another merchant. So that's more preventing people from having to diversify the systems that they use. Let them use a different distribution of Magento instead of not using Magento at all.
I've been thinking a lot about this splintering thing. Brent and I talked about it, and he had an interesting point, which was like sort of people have been saying that you're splintering the Magento community forever, in different because of different things and different issues, and it's. Again, there's a very reasonable argument to be made there that you don't want to splinter, you don't want to break it up, you want to have one Magento open source. But I think that there's something about, like there's a way in which things have always been splintering in a million directions all the time, and it's an open source community that follows the energy, in a sense, follows, the things that are most useful, the things that make developers happy. So whether that's Huva, or whether that's a module that Colin Mollenauer put out, or his Redis module, or Alan Storm's thing he put, a tool set, or a million different things, right? You could say are splintering, right? Or a community member creates a shipping extension or an email extension. Isn't that splintering? And that's not splintering in the same sense that if the core distribution itself is not being splintered. But I think at the end of the day, like
we have two versions of Magento already. Adobe is diversifying. It's like quite obviously splitting into two products. Why not three?
Yeah. And you use the one that makes sense for your use case, and I don't know.
And to be honest, I wouldn't mind having to let go of this fork in 6 months if it turns out that things change for the better. If we can accomplish to either have Adobe care about the SMB ecosystem or the monolith. I don't see that happen. I think that's so far apart from their strategy, and it's a valid strategy, but I think my strategy is also valid. So we should accept from each other that we want different things and allow each other to do that, and don't fight over it. We can empower each other.
Right. There's only so long you can wait around asking for things. Like if this was day one and you were like, I'm going to do a fork. It's not day one, right? Time has passed. There's been challenges. There's been massive problems with some sections of the ecosystem, right? This is the thing. Other sections of the ecosystem are doing fantastic. They're moving up market. And by the way, this is probably, I'd imagine, the case with most, if not all, the board members, is that they're doing great. They're moving up market. They're doing bigger projects. They're getting deeper into the enterprisey sides of the ecosystem. And
for
all
them,
those
the
people
SMB market already felt lost for a while. Like they've
been lost for a while. Already didn't care. And
M1 to M2 was already a harsh time for those merchants. Well, some of those are still waiting to migrate off. Some haven't even re-platformed yet, and they still don't know where they want to go. We could make Magento a much more interesting place for those people. And that can only help the ecosystem in a whole. Yeah.
I watched I tweeted my TLDR for the live panel was the association is saying, let's take it slow and keep the name Magento. In other words, let's go through the process. Let's suggest it. Let's do the board schedule. Let's wait. And hopefully Magento, Adobe will allow us to use the name Magento for the stuff that the community wants to do. Because again, they purchased it. It's theirs. It's their trademark. And then the Hoover guys, and I know you probably don't like me grossly oversimplifying it this way, is let's move urgently and keep the spirit of Magento. And by that I mean, this thing that everybody is seeing. I mean, Karen called it, seeing the sincerity of an open source community. And, you've described it in different ways, but it's like, what matters, it goes back to that developer happiness or the energy or the electricity in the community. That's what matters more than anything else. Because without that, you can have the name Magento and the community underneath it can die. And by the way, that's exactly what's been happening. Right? So this is not a theoretical thing. This is what has been happening. And it's kind of happening in this weird kind of muted way, where like we sort of passive way, where it's just sort of gradually the frog boiling and we're all gradually accepting that it's kind of never going to be what it was. And then you're like, hey guys, I kind of want this thing to be as cool and exciting as it was back in the day, and I'm going to make it happen. And you did with just one little section of the market and section of the code base, the front end. And it's working at a small scale, but to me, a freaking amazing scale. And so I think, yes, it is splintering, but at the end of the day, the community is going to rally around the splinter that's the best and the most meaningful and the most productive. And then hopefully everybody can rally to that one splinter, and then that can have, not be such a splinter anymore. It can be a big old piece of wood.
And we're very hopeful, especially after spending 2 days locked up in a room with them in Poland, that we can accomplish things with the association. And we've set out some common goals that hopefully will be confirmed by the rest of the board of the MA of how we can accomplish things together. But the thing is, we have this sense of urgency. They also have this sense of urgency, but they can't move as fast as we can.
There's bureaucracy. Yeah.
There's bureaucracy. There's a dependency to Adobe, which I think needs to be loosened,
loosened a little bit.
Yeah, if you're gonna decouple anything, let it be the association. Give them free reins. So we have the power of doing what's good for us, and we're unrestricted. It's for a reason, which you also discussed with brands. It's for a reason that we're a small group of people that just happen to already be working with each other mostly. We're centered around Europe. We're a few bigger agencies, some extension vendors joined, but we've also spoken to hosting providers, just put our feelers out, like would they be in for such an initiative? And we felt fairly confident that we could get the backing to actually pull this off. And just the people that signed the letter, for me, felt like enough critical mass to form a snowball. And you only need a snowball this big.
Yes.
Push it down the hill, and you can crush a city with it. So that's kind of the strategy. Like as Brent also pointed out, or like he guessed right. this is enough for us to not just make a statement, but to get things going. And to start, however small, but start and take ownership over something and have that grow. And if we can find the alignment with the association, and we can get the backing of the association, and through that, the backing of Adobe, perfect. We're just already moving ahead, paving the way, getting the experience that hopefully the association will benefit from. So as soon as the association has his task force, open source task force formed, Vina and I both signed up for that task force in the case that we would end up there, or even if not, if that
I need to see you on the board, and I want a board seat, and the only thing I'm going to do is tweet about how awesome you are, as I've begun to do, and I know it drives you crazy. That's all I'm going to do. I won't even vote. I will defer all my votes to you. And
I would argue you wouldn't be in the right place then. I think we need some really strong voices on the association, indeed.
And let me say this,
open
because
seats,
again,
and let's not go too deep into what the association has to do, because they have their responsibilities. They've heard the voice of the community now, and it's up to them to pick that up.
I feel bad every time I say something remotely critical, but let me just say, because you said this, and I completely agree with it, which is that if the association had free reign, you're like, what did I say? If they did have free reign, and I'm kind of like figuring this out as I go, because like I said, they're all the right people. They all get stuff done. They're all the best people for the job. And why hasn't it happened? And I think it's very simple. Purpose. And it's that they didn't have free reign. I think it's they didn't have free reign. And that,
or purpose.
That leads to a lack of purpose. Because what I know for sure in my heart of hearts, if they did have free reign, the one very simple, very reasonable thing that they don't have is they have to ask Adobe permission for everything. Which, I understand the reasons for that. Adobe bought the thing. But I'm just saying, if they had free reign, that group of people, it would be amazing. It would be everything we want it to be. And that's not entirely possible because of reasons we understand, at least at the current moment. But that's all I wanted to say, because again,
it's not impossible. It's not impossible. The bylaws of the association are live, and you can read them. But Adobe is granting some privileges to the association, like lending out the name Magento.
Right.
But I would argue, to represent the community, that's not about a name. That's about the people and the product. Yeah. And nobody owns the people. Nobody. Well, they own the license to the product, but we can keep the license and use it. We can use the product. We built the largest chunk of the product was built by us.
We are Magento. Right?
Yeah, and for me that's not in a name. I mean, it holds incredible value, but not enough value for me to lay on my back and put my feet up and
100%.
And just give 100%. Up and wait.
Yeah.
So that's the freedom that we have, and that makes it we can actually make progress and just do what we feel like doing. And does that mean that we come up with something in 1 month that every merchant should switch to? Hell no. It would be super irresponsible. But we feel up to the task to make that work. And we're going to have to learn. We're going to have to attract the right people, because as Damien said, I can build a new front end, but hell, I can't understand the whole framework that's Magento just on my own.
Right.
There's some parts I don't rather not know because I don't like them so much. But I mean, the maintainers already exist. Some of the maintainers left. They might still have appetite to do maintainership on a bit of a more loose ecosystem.
as Damien was talking about that, I'm talking about the idea of different people owning different subsystems, and like he's in
absolutely,
the
and we need such a solid organization. And I don't underestimate any of this. I've been speaking about this for months with Vinay. We thought all of this through for a long time, and we decided on what can we do right now, what is the most immediate action that needs to happen, and that turned out to be taking ownership over the product. And not taking it from Adobe, but have something of our own that at least is a safety net for worst case scenario. And it's just a safety net for now, but we're willing to heavily invest in that. Me, on a personal level, right now, I've already invested much more time than I would have in 3 years being on an association board. Massive amount of hours have gone into there. I'm willing to invest a lot into making this work. And if it turns out in 6 months or a year that's not needed, that doesn't feel like it was a waste, because by taking this action, things started moving. So if everything falls in the right direction, it's because we took the right actions. Because otherwise, I'm fairly certain nothing would have happened for a long time.
Yeah. Well, I'm just happy to see you doing your thing, and not just you. I talk a lot about you, but I know that it's everybody, and it's cool to see the energy there's been a little shock to the system, and people are excited. Some people are a little nervous, but I love.
It's good. We need that because the emotion shows that people still care, and it's fantastic.
100%.
Someone that goes
100%.
through the trouble of writing 30 tweets to me to tell them that I'm wrong, that shows passion. They really care about what happens. And the only thing we need is everybody to understand that we're all doing this because of the passion for the platform. And if you do it for the right reasons, we can't fail. And I'm for sure 100% in this for the right reasons. I don't want people to leave. I don't want to see friends moving into other ecosystems. That sucks.
When we talked, I can't remember if it was our first podcast or the one with Phil, or somewhere along the way, and you were communicating the fact that what you just said, right? That you want this ecosystem to be alive and well for a long time to come. And I had honestly, like I said, sort of accepted that it was just kind of fading away. My interests were shifting. A lot of people's were. Everybody's diversifying to other platforms, right? And then I'm talking to you, and I'm like, okay, yeah, something cool, interesting, fun, whatever. And then at some point it clicked for me that you were like not screwing around with this vision of yours. And I think it's cool, man. It's really awesome, you know.
For me, it's go Magento or go home. Go Magento, go home.
I love it.
Magento, go. Yeah.
It's great, man. And I think it's necessary. I think that you need to have a leader, and there's a lot of leaders of whatever this thing is. But you need leaders that have that excitement, that vision, and also get stuff done and push
there was
pixels, you know.
Such a powerful people just there at that conference in Poland. Like, they felt the same urgency. They had really good input. Just having someone like Talash there, he's such an asset.
I'm so jealous of his Jeep setup. His whole remote, like land crew, like his whole, what's the word?
I'm jealous of his car. His car just gets to see his smile the whole day. Just being around Talash is great. He brings such a positive energy, and I mean, Ignacio and we had such valid input from Ivan, and the Type of Free guy. He's amazing. Type of Free has figured out so many
That
things.
Typo 3 guy, I friggin' love that guy, dude.
I spent almost 3 days with that guy. He was in every meeting that we did, and he had such a valid, such a good insight into how to do things, because they struggled through. So many times he said, "Don't make me cry. You're running into walls that we ran into years ago." And please listen to me. This is how you need to do it, and don't go that direction, because you'll hurt yourself.
Yeah, I should talk to him, because I want to better understand how the Typo 3 stuff is structured. I've heard about Typo 3 forever. I know the Germans are heavy into it.
It's brilliant. They have a commercial company that is owned by the community. The community owns the product.
That's awesome.
And we've looked at this for a long time, and Vinay has talked to a lot of the people from the Typo 3 ecosystem. And we learned so much about how they run things. And it's actually not so different from what the association initially would have looked like. So that gave us a lot of inspiration of how a company could be set up. And I think the association could move towards that direction. But just the idea, Typo 3 has a huge community. It's nothing compared to Magento. It's nothing. I mean, it's large, but there's so many people and so much money involved in the Magento ecosystem. That means that our potential is bigger than what Typo 3 has. And they have pretty great stuff. They have really good systems to pay maintainers for work that they do. And everyone gets a vote on where the product is moving.
That's cool.
You can't expect the association to do all these things on a voluntary basis, spending 4 hours a month in a meeting, and then what can you get done? They have a full-time job, they have other responsibilities. You need some driving forces there, and you need the funding to get stuff done.
Hey, stop talking about the association so much.
I avoided the 2-strike offense. Get stuff done.
There you go. We're even.
Yeah, but it's all interwoven. But things on that end look really well, and it's just a big positive that we spent so much time talking, because if we would have been fighting, we wouldn't have spent so much time together. And same for you. The people on the board, they have my highest appreciation. Like they're friends, and I genuinely like them.
100%. And that's why, that's why I feel weird. It's weird because they're all friends, and at the same time they have a public role, and so I'm commenting on things that are happening in the public sphere, and I feel weird about it. So I almost want to text them all and sort of apologize in advance as a friend. I don't know. And then they're not. It's a whole. I'm sure everything's gonna be fine. But I know you got to go soon, Willem.
It's true.
It was a lot of fun catching up. And hey, keep doing what you're doing, brother. You are killing the game, man. I love it. So
I would argue it's not a game. I'm not playing.
This is true.
I'm not playing. Yeah.